Hi everyone, welcome back to the Comptia Network Plus course, installing and configuring wireless LAN hardware. As I said earlier, installing 802.11 equipment is actually fairly simple. Remember that there are really only two main types of components in 802.11 networks: access points and network interface cards, APs and NICs. Wireless network interface card installation is just like installing any other network card, but nowadays most, if not all, laptops have wireless cards pre-installed, and that's as easy as it gets. And just as with connecting an Ethernet card to a LAN switch, you need the wireless network card to connect to an access point. The access point installation can be fairly simple as well. Take it out of the box, connect the antennas if necessary, connect the power supply, and then place the access point where it can reach the highest number of clients. The last part is probably the trickiest, but it really just involves a little common sense and maybe a bit of trial and error. Knowing that walls obstruct the signal means that putting the access point out in the open, even indoors, works better. Also, you know, it should be placed away from sources of RF interference, so putting it next to the microphone or phone system is probably a really bad idea too. Near a metal filing cabinet is also not good. So just remember to move your access point around to find a spot that gives you the best signal strength for all the clients that need to use it. Now that you have your hardware installed, it's time to configure it right. Let's get started, no worries. Configuring your access point and network interface card to work together isn't as tricky as it sounds. Most wireless equipment is designed to work almost without configuration, so by default you can pretty much turn things on and start working. The only thing you need to configure are customization settings, name, network address and so on, and security settings, and even these aren't required. Network interface configuration: Windows XP, Windows Vista, 7.8, Windows Server 2003, 2008, 2012. Include software to automatically configure a wireless connection, and they do so automatically when you install a wireless network interface card, assuming that somehow you have a Windows machine without a wireless NIC installed on the motherboard, and if you have one without a NIC installed, your Windows machine is really old. Configure a Windows 10 client is pretty simple, but what do you do if you can't get it to actually work afterwards? If this happens to you, searching for the solution can eat up a serious amount of your time. Follow these steps could save you from the frustrating quest. 1. To find a wireless network, just go to the lower right hand corner of your screen and click the icon that looks like a wireless wave. You will see the box below. Double click the network you want to join and click anyway, and even if it's an unsecured network, you will then see a screen showing that it's trying to connect. If you're using security, the access point will ask you for credentials. Check your TCP/IP settings to find out if you're not really connected to the internet and troubleshoot from there. Access point configuration. Once you've successfully configured your workstations, it's time to move on and configure the access point. There's literally hundreds of different access points out there, and of course each uses a different method to configure its internal software. The good news is that for the most part they all follow the same general pattern. First of all, out of the box, the access point should configure with an IP address that's usually something similar to 192.168.1.1, but check the documentation that comes with the AP to be sure. You can just take the AP out of its box, plug it into the power outlet and connect it to your network, but in order to manage the AP, you've got to configure its IP address scheme to match your networks. You should receive a DHCP address from the AP when you connect, but if you don't get one, start by configuring a workstation on the wired network with an IP address 192.168.1.2 or similar, and subnet mask on the subnet as the access points. You should then be able to connect to the access point to begin the configuration process. Usually you do this via a web browser or a manufacturer supplied configuration program. Once you've successfully connected to the AP, you then got to configure its parameters. Following are the minimum requirement parameters common to APs that you should configure for your AP to work properly. Remember, typically an AP works right out of the box, but it's unsecured too. SSID, as I talked about earlier, this is the name of the wireless network that your AP will advise. If this new access point is to be part of an existing wireless network, it needs to be configured with the same SSID as the existing network. In a network with only one AP, you can think of the SSID as the name of the AP. An IP address. An AP IP addresses, remember, even though, after losing where I was. An IP address, remember, even though most access points come pre-configured with an IP address, it may not be the one that matches the wired network's IP addressing scheme. So it follows that you should configure the AP's IP address, including the address subnet mask and default gateway addresses, to match the wired network that you want it to connect to. An access point does not need an IP address to work in your network. The IP of the access point is used only to manage the access point. Operating mode, access point or bridging. Access points can operate in one of two main modes: access point mode and bridging mode. Access point mode allows the access point to operate as a traditional access point to allow a wireless client transparent access to a wired network. Alternatively, two access points set to bridging mode provide a wireless bridge between two wired network segments. Password. Every access point has some kind of default password that's used to access the access point's configuration. For security reasons, it's a good idea to change this as soon as you can to connect to and configure the access point. Wireless channel 802.11. Wireless networks can operate on different channels to avoid interference. Most wireless access points come set to work on a particular channel from the factory, and you can change it if other networks in the area are using the same channel, but be aware that no particular channel is any more secure than another. Wireless stations do not use channel number as the criteria when seeking a connection. They only pay attention to SSIDs, WEP, WPA. Although it isn't a requirement per se, I definitely recommend enabling security right from the start as soon as you turn on the AP access point. Commercial access points typically come configured as an open network so that it's easy to log in, whereas enterprise access points come unconfigured and don't work until they are configured. WEP and Wi-Fi protected access (WPA) allow data to be encrypted before it's sent over the wireless connection, and all configuration detail entails is to enable it and pick a key to be used for the connections. Simply easy to use configuration security is certainly worth your time. So here's what you first will be asked for: to enter one or more human readable passphrases called share keys, secret passwords that won't ever be sent over the wire. After entering each one, you'll generally click a button to initiate a one-way hash to produce a WEP key of a size related to the number of bits of WEP encryption you want. Entering the same passphrase on a wireless client causes the hash, not the passphrase, to be sent from the wireless client to the access point during a connection attempt. Most configuration utilities allow you to create multiple keys in case you want to grant someone temporary access to the network, but you still want to keep the primary passphrase a secret. You can just delete the key you enabled to permit temporary access, and you don't need it anymore without affecting access by any primary LAN participants. Here's an example of connecting to a Linksys access point, not a Linksys router, which is a different device. The first screen I've connected to using HTTP to configure the device. The IP address of the Linksys AP is 192.168.1.245. If it was a Linksys wireless router instead of a typical home DSL cable modem connection device around today, then the address would be 192.168.1.1. As you can see, there's no username required and the password is just admin. Again, be sure not to leave this login configuration as the default. Once I click OK, I get taken to a screen where I can change my IP address. It isn't vital for an access point to have an IP address, but it comes in handy for management purposes. You can change the IP address as well as the device name from this screen if you want. I clicked the wireless tab on the bottom and this screen appeared. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider sharing and subscribing. Thank you.